Hello, my name's Tom Carhill. It's Tuesday, the 14th of May 2014. No, it's 13th of May 2014. I want to make a video about a man called Ian R. Crane, right? There's this character, he makes these videos about various stuff. He does talks, and they make videos out of them. Some of these talks are quite good. I'd actually recommend you have a look at them and you watch them. That you know, like he's a good speaker. He's not an excellent speaker, but he's a good speaker. And they're quite interesting, these talks are. Now, the first negative thing I ever heard about the guy was that people were turning up to his talks, which go under this banner of AV, as per Alternative View 1 and 2, 3, 4, and I think Alternative View 5 is either just about to happen or it's just happened. Now, the thing is that the first time I heard a negative thing about him, somebody said, I couldn't believe it, I turned up to this talk and they had these reams and reams of, you know, DVDs, and they were selling them for like £2.50 or something, and all of these DVDs, like none of them were actually his DVD, so he'd been just downloading stuff off the internet and selling it as a DVD. Now, I think it's a generational thing paired with a sort of experience thing. I mean, I don't want to get too stuck on this, but some people seem to really like having a DVD of something, even if it's not. I'm not talking about really important evidence or something. I'm talking about they just like to have one. That it makes them feel important that they've got it on a DVD. I don't know why, but anyway, that's the way it works for certain people. It doesn't really work with me. If something's important, I suppose I might want it on that format, but as in important to me, like something that, you know, could get lost or the computer could get crashed or something. But if it's freely available on the internet and it's been available for years, you're always going to be able to find it. So I don't really see what the problem is there. I understand certain, you know, but anyway, the point is, he was selling DVDs, they weren't his, and he wasn't giving anyone any money for them. So he's sort of going, support the cause, support the cause. Well, it's whose cause is it? Your sort of financing cause. Now, it's the other thing, right? He says, he always makes out he's this kind of roughy-tufty oil man, like he works in the oil industry. And from what I hear, more recently, he actually worked in marketing, so he wasn't really an oil man at all. He just worked in marketing for some oil company. And if you look at him, he's a bit camp. I'm not saying he's queer, but you know, he's a bit camp, and he's a bit. He's the kind of person you slapped him on the back, he'd probably like make a complaint about you. Do you know what I mean? And you'd be like, oh, sorry, I'll just slap him on your back to say hello. So, you know, he's a bit of a namby-pamby ponce, really. And you know, that's something that struck me, because if you're sort of like a cowardly type character, yeah, and I don't mean not necessarily all those people are cowards, but I think some people are just a bit, you know, like a bit of a puff, you know, to use it in its most liberal sense. I don't mean he is actually a puff, like, but the point is that most of those kind of like namby-pamby people like him, it gets very easily offended if you mention anything to him that he doesn't agree with about him, like his delivery or anything. They're not normally the type of people who go around sticking up for other people. They don't really do it, because then it's cowardice. He's driven by cowardice, you can tell he is. And there's things like that, and so that doesn't add up either. So he's all about the money, without any doubt, right? Because this is what it looked like. You've got to put on top of this, all companies pay good money, right? Now, you can get fantastic money or you can get just good money. But the point is, if you've basically retired and you've been living in America and all that, the idea that if you go around selling everything, oh, I want to finance this, I want to finance that, it all strikes me as being a little bit unrealistic. Now, I understand that some people just will not do anything unless it's going to get 100% covered, and they want to make sure that they've always got a bit of a margin on top, even if they're doing it sort of in inverted commas for charity, because they want to make sure it, you know, like they just don't want to lose a single penny on anything ever. I know there's those people, and they don't really value their own time against money. So, for instance, if they've spent the last 6 months working on something, they don't think, well, I just want to make sure it happens, so therefore I'm going to make sure it happens, because I've just wasted 6 months on it. Otherwise, if half the people turn up because they think it's too expensive, then, you know, I've lost money. I know there's people like that, but the point is that these tickets for this AV weekend or whatever it is, they're quite expensive. I can't remember what they are, but it throws in a hotel and all this stuff. Again, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that. You can't hang anyone on that right now, but you got to remember that these things don't go down that. You see what I mean? It's like he might appear to be self-financing in this perspective, but he should have the money to be able to just sort of, you know, not make everything so expensive. You've also got to remember there's another factor here. People who are interested in the way the world's going often become interested when they're not working for a while, because they have a lot of time to look into things, because otherwise they're constantly consumed by going to work and stuff. That's not always the case, but it's often the case. Now, it doesn't mean these people are losers or, you know, like, good for nothings. It's just they're going through a phase where they're not working for some reason or another. And of course, there's nothing wrong with being poor anyway, but the way the system is, it basically means that anybody who doesn't just constantly toe the line, normally, very often, will either be working for themselves, in which case they'll often be too busy to do a lot of the things that, you know, would be conducive to meeting in or going to see his things. But generally speaking, a lot of them will be poor. So, you know, like, or they'll be going through a phase where they haven't got any money. They might have, like, good assets, but they won't have spare money thrown around. So there's a few things there. Now, this is the other thing. And again, if it comes back to the cowardice model, right, I understand that most people are cowards, and they're driven by cowardice, jealousy, and sycophancy. But sycophancy, which is, you know, like being a suck-ass, is all based around the cowardice and the other two. It's like in the sort of triumvirate of human drives. That's not really a pure one, if you like. That's sort of a mixture of the other two. But it's just useful to put it in there because it's definitely above courage and love and all those things. Most people, those things do not drive them. Trust me, they don't. And I'm not talking about people necessarily who be overtly bad here. They just feign like idealistic motions to look good because of the other three reasons. That's the way it works. But anyway, so if we let him off, we're only going to be letting him off because of bad morals. Yeah, but I'm not saying that he's got specifically bad morals. I'm just saying most people do have very bad underlying morals and drives. They're, you know, it's like, you know, they're not good. Most people's aren't, in my experience. So this is where you get to the main crux of what's wrong with him, right? You've got Brian Gerrish. Brian Gerrish is a Marxist agitator, right? And I am absolutely happy to say it. And when I've said it to him, or I've done videos about him and written to him and accused him of things, he can't come back with anything apart from, what have you ever done for your country? He always says stupid things like that. He never answers a question. He can't answer a question because he is a Marxist agitator. And when you realise what he's doing, you realise how evil he is. Now, what makes Brian Gerrish much more pervasive is he actually preys on people who are very vulnerable, but not just vulnerable as in they're easy to trick and easy to align yourself with because it seems to be a good cause. It's because they're often in a situation of torment. Now, if you understand about how Marxist agitation skills work, right, there's lots of different types, but his speciality is, it's Saul Alinsky Rules for Radicals. I think it's Rule 12 of the 12 rules, I forget which one it is. And basically what it does is, you just cause mayhem in a sort of agitated population, or you agitate a population. You agitate people to cause problems, and then other people will rally round you as they see that person being all agitated, and you'll say, oh, I was just trying to help them. I was trying to help them. Look what happened to me. Oh, like I'm a saint sort of thing. And everyone will go, yeah, you just tried to help them. Of course, everyone else thinks he did try and help them, but he never did. And when you find out what he was doing with these people who were having their children taken away, like crashing their court cases, losing their court documents, saying he'd help them out with something, then not turning up when they made an arrangement the day before a court date or on a court date, and then you can't get hold of him for 3 days, and then you say they were ungrateful. He's an absolute evil, nasty, evil swine of the lowest order. He really is. And I know he comes across well to start off with, but he's very cold, uncaring, evil, well, probably reader of the Talmud. You know, normal people don't normally sink to that level. When a normal kind of, like, let's say I'm from a Western background, right? When a normal person is like just a scumbag, right? Yeah, they might not turn up to things, they might not answer their phone, but they don't repeatedly try and hook people in and say they're going to help them without any financial potential gain, and then just not help them and deliberately sabotage their court cases. You know, they don't do stuff like that. Now, for an absolute fact, people like Bill Maloney, who says he's a child protection type advocate, yeah, he will know about this because he's constantly on, you know, with Brian. You constantly endorse Brian, and he knows, for instance, that Brian is he must know because these people have said no. We went for Tim for help, and he causes all these problems and all this torment. So he's a wrong one. There's no question. He is, right. And if he says, oh no, I just don't want to break up a movement, which is what Michael Dougherty says, He's obviously a wrong one. I know Michael Dougherty's definitely a wrong one because he's also an agitator. It's a different type of agitation, and I believe it's partly self-serving. I believe that he's going to try and get rid of the IPCC, and they're going to use it, and they're also going to. It's all part of this agenda to take visibility out of the court system, like in the communist system, because all of these people are working the communist agenda. Now, how does Ian Crane link into this? Like, I didn't mean to sort of go off the point for an irrelevant reason there with those other two examples. But you see, those two both seem well-meaning. They do seem well-meaning. And possibly they are well-meaning, but they are being pushed in a certain direction. They're willingly going along with it. And the point is that both those people know that Brian's a dickhead. Everybody has told them. And then later they've said, no, it's more than that. It's calculated. And they know this. And then people have got back to them and said, look, this is a catalogue of events that they've been involved with. And, you know, like, these are all these things they've done. They've maliciously planned them from the start, and they've caused people massive problems. People have gone to prison and all sorts. And they've gone, I don't want to split up the movement. Well, who would want to be in a movement that's all based around deceit, treachery, and lots of villains and shysters and Marxist agitators? I mean, obviously, that's no movement anyone would sensibly want to be in. So, obviously, and this whole concept of a movement, that's just sort of like a wankerism, isn't it? You know, it's nonsense. And also, again, it's like the old thing. If someone lies to protect somebody, or somebody lies to protect themselves because they put themselves in a bad situation, I can understand that. But people who just lie about things, it's a bit like when Jews lie about, like, the Holocaust, and the Holocaust, and they say lampshades made out of skin, things made out of soap. You've got Jenkel-Wernick going on about all this mad stuff about a guy with a clock around his neck in the toilet, and throwing babies onto a fire and all this, and then they say, oh, that didn't happen, but all the other stuff did, and then that didn't happen, but all the other stuff did, that didn't happen. Well, hang on a minute, look, let's say somebody raped or murdered somebody, and you saw it happen, yeah? You just say, no, we went up to him and I stabbed him. You wouldn't say, oh yeah, and then he pulled his pants down, and he like stuck his bum on his face and wiggled it around like that, and then afterwards go, oh no, he didn't do that, but he did stab him. How credible would you be? You see, it's like, again, it's Jewish lies, right? Marxist agitation comes from Jews, right? All of the people who took over the Ukraine and murdered everyone, they were all Jews. Communism and Judaism is the same thing. There's quite a few rabbis who've written about this, and they explain it's the same thing. And there's also an equally strong presence of Jews who are very, very, very concerned that if these disgusting Marxist Jews get in charge of anything, they'll absolutely fuck the world up, and they'll make it impossible for them to get on in the world. And also, they're very likely to be pogroms, and they will all get killed when anyone finds out, and no one will make any distinction. It will just be Jew is bad, which is what happens, and obviously understandably so. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that fox is tame, he doesn't get the chickens. You know, if you're shooting foxes because they're getting the chickens, you're going to just get all of them. So you've got to understand that there's a balancing act. Right, so getting back to Ian Crane, why is he going along with all these disgusting Marxist agitators? Right, he used to work for a big oil company, yeah. He talks about knowing a mason and how you get things done if you're a mason, right? He talks about that. Now, I'd say the chances are he works for an oil company he is a mason, right? That's what I'd say. My experience, I have worked for oil companies very briefly, and they find out you're not a mason and they get rid of you. So that's what happens, right? So I think he probably was a mason or is a mason. And why is he going on with this disgusting Marxist bent? And why is he going on with these horrible people? And if you just want to expand upon it, every time you have any of these activist type things, well, they're not real activists, they're faux activists, aren't they? You always get loads and loads of like Jewish agents turning up. Like, do you know when they had the Occupy St. Paul's, and then they had the UBS building, which is the ex-Swiss bank? All these Jewish subversives just turned up, dressed as hippies, right? Now, if you look at some of them, right? Some days, one of them was reported on the news at the start, and he didn't have dreadlocks, right? Then about a week later, he had hair extensions in. He had dreadlocks, right? So hair extensions are expensive. I mean, unless he's gone and like mugged some Rastafarian and stolen his dreadlocks off him. But this guy, these were blonde dreadlocks, so he'd have had to go down to somewhere like the South Coast and get some surfer dude or something and drug him and steal his dreadlocks. Short of doing that, he's had to pay for hair extensions, right? They were all Jews. All of these people, they're all actors. Almost all of them are Jews, right? But that was very obvious, very, very eerie when you're around them, because you know they're all creeps and they're all up to something wrong. You know they are. But you see, this is the same. Always when you get these Marxist subversives, they're almost always Jews. It's always run by Jews, and you get a very, very creepy air around it, and you can tell they're no good, and you can tell they're not your friends. Right now, Ian Crane's been around these things for long enough that he should know this, right? So let's say he goes to something and he's got all these Jewish subversives sneaking about the place. Like, you'd think he'd cotton on and he'd think, right, I'm going to disassociate from these people. But either because of cowardice, because he doesn't want to be like them to attack him somehow, or because of he just likes making money, or because of some other reason, he doesn't do this. So Ian Crane is to be totally not trusted. I mean, even people who are like sitting duck targets, like Tony Farrell, big Jewish nose, pretends that he used to work for South Yorkshire Police intelligence analyst, didn't. I called him out as being a subversive the very, very first time I ever seen him. I'd never heard of him. I'd never heard him speak. I'd never seen him on the internet. I'd just seen him the first time, and it was obvious as the nose in your face, or sorry, to you pardon the pun, that he was a horrible subversive. You could tell he was. And all of these people are. And then you got people like Belinda McKenzie setting up charities with Tony Farrell. It's like a tree, a spider, like a spider that goes out. Well, not a spider, like a tree, and the branches go off. And if it all comes from a rotten source, it will all be rotten. They don't just start doing one bit of Jewish subversion and then doing somewhat good stuff. That's not how it works. Do you see what I mean? If they start doing bad stuff, that everything they do will be doing bad. People who tolerate bad people around them for a long period of time, when they're sabotaging things and stuff, you know, it's guilt by association. And you got people like, obviously, Belinda McKenzie. Belinda McKenzie is linked to Tony Farrell, and she's linked to all this options, not adoptions, which is this scam, which is meant to be a charity but isn't, where they also agitate parents who have lost their children to the state, and they've adopted their children out, and they say, oh no, we can help you, and they can't help them, but they just pretend they can, and they just possibly take their money, but either way, they just lead them down the garden path and agitate them. This is the technique, is to cause absolute frustration and anger to the point that these people will break. Look, let's say you've had your children taken off you for no good reason, right? Or let's say it's possibly for good reason, but due process hasn't been followed. Or you realise something very strange about the fact a social worker just decides to have them taken off you and you've never done a crime, and then the next thing you never see them again. This is going to absolutely crystallise in your brain. Once you get past it, yeah, you're going to realise there's something extremely evil running the country. Yeah, you'll realise there'll be no question. You won't look at Miliband and think, oh, he's just a freak. You'll think he is an evil Jewish subversive like his father, and we need to stop them. You see, the purpose of people like Farrell and Belinda McKenzie is to stop people who've had absolute intolerable cruelty happen to them, which is totally unfamiliar to the Western mindset, apart from when they get taken over by Jewish subversives in a communist system or when they all get murdered. This cruelty is so uncommon to them, they can't understand it. But those people can understand it because they can see it, and they can see all the courts are involved in it, and all the police are just going along with it. They don't really want to go along with it, but they're going along with it. Why are they going along with it? And you've got all these other people who are like these social services. What on earth's the point of them? I've looked into social services. I can't really understand what their actual purpose is. I can see that they get more money if they steal more children and take them off, because it's all worked on a kind of pro rata. How many children they get adopted, their council gets paid more money, and the council boss will get paid more bonuses. And of course, then he'll get consultancy fees from lawyers and stuff who've been getting paid an absolute fortune to sit in on these cases, which they deliberately spin out. So what you've got to realise that these things, they're very evil, and if you actually see how they work, often it hides behind money. So people say with Ian Crane, like with the social services thing and the lawyers who work for the social services, they go, oh, it's about money, it's just money, it's money. And people go, oh, it's not money. Some people even say it's not money, they're just trying to do a good job. But that, you know, that's the absolute retard level. Then you get to the one they go, oh, it's just about money, it's just greed. Who could turn that money down? And then you get to the one you realise that it's not just greed, and it's the fact that every single thing they do hides under greed. They're evil, disgusting Marxist subversives, right? And they would have you all dead. And they always hide under the pretext of money, right? So don't be fooled, right? His talks and stuff are quite good. I'm not vouching for everything he says, but don't be fooled by him, right? Don't be fooled thinking it's just about money. It's never just about money. I'm Tom Cahill. It's Tuesday, the 13th of May 2014. Please comment. Bye-bye.